Welcome. This is our second tutorial on the project. And you can see I have it open. I'm going to move this over to the other monitor. You can see we have a full-length screen. It doesn't matter what size the screen is, it's going to fill the whole length out. That's like a fluid version. We want to do a fixed version of it so that we can control it a little better. I really don't think this is very attractive to have a column as wide as this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start and go into code, and we're going to make a few changes here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to, underneath the body, between the body here and the body there, we're going to create a div, and we're going to call it wrapper. So what I'm doing is selecting the areas that we want, up into including the H2, so everything underneath the body and just above the closing body tag. So I'm going to go into insert, and you can do it whatever way you want. I just think this is one of the easier ways. We're going to click on div here, and we're going to create a div, and we're going to give it an ID of wrapper. Now, some people like to use container, and I do too, but because we have a class called column container, I don't want to mess with it, so we use wrapper. And we're just going to click on OK. I could have created a new CS rule right from there, but we're going to do it from the designer. So I'm going to open up the CSS designer. If you don't see it on any of your windows, I happen to have it tied into my file menu, but just go into window and look over here. You can see the CSS designer. Just click on it and boom, we brought it over here. And so now we have one source, the project CSS. We have the column container class, the column class, and then we have an ID left. And you can see, if you want to see everything that's set, just click on the show set. And that tells you the only thing set there is the width. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new selector. So let me choose all. And I'm going to click on the wrapper. And you can click down here as well if you want. So what we're going to do is click on new selector. And because I have this selected here, it should sense that. So I'm going to click on the plus sign, and you notice that it did the wrapper over here. Hit the enter key to finalize it, and I'm just going to create a width. So we need to find the properties over here, which happens to be here. It usually is down here, so you can move it down if you want. I'm just going to leave it here. Click on properties, and notice I have show set. So let's get rid of that so we can do whatever we want. So from here, I'm going to set the width to 1180. Doesn't have to be 1180, but that's a good width. We leave the height alone. We don't really need any of these things in here whatsoever. And what I'm going to do is set the top margin to 0, the bottom margin to 0, and let's see what it looks like now. Okay, well, it's shoved over to the left. So that's not really exciting. That's not what we want. Now, do not confuse this blue border around here with an actual border. This is what you get when you have something selected in live view. So now I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to take the margins left and right and change them to auto. So auto on the left, auto on the right, and that centers. If you remember from the 338 class, a left and right auto will center the div to what you want. So right now, I'm going to now add a border. So we have layout, we have text, we have border, and we have background. So what I'm going to do here is put a border around it, and I'm just going to do a blue border for right now. Because I want it all the way around, I'm going to choose all sides. I'm going to choose the width as 2 pixels. the style, solid. And the color, for right now, let's see. Let's just choose black for right now. And let's see what we have now. Let me move this out of the way. I'm going to save everything. And I'm going to go into live real time. Choose Google Chrome. And this is what we have over here. So it really doesn't look all that exciting because we haven't done anything. So, but we have it set over here. We can make the border bigger if we want. So let's close this out and let's make sure that you understand what's happening over here. Right now we have 1180 as a total width, but because we added a border of 2 pixels on the left and a border of 2 pixels on the right, the amount of space that we have left is going to be 1180 minus 4, which would be 1176. So if we're going to use a image up here in our header, we need to make it 1176. So before we do that, let's go back into Code View. And we have the wrapper here. And I'm going to insert a header right here. And we'll just click at the insertion point. Now, I have not put in an ID because we have a header tag and there's only going to be one header tag. So we can, at this point in time, we can modify the header tag with CSS. So what I'm going to do is make the header tag a different color just so you see how it affects it. So the first thing we need to do is click on Selector. And notice that it actually chose header because it's selected. So I'm going to hit the Enter key here. I'm going to do the properties. I'm going to add a property. And I'm going to just choose the background. And I'll make the background color blue so you can see what it is. Now, clicking here doesn't change anything. You need to click here to bring up the color screen and then physically click to change it. So now we have a color of blue for the background. So now we have this over here. Now, by doing this, you can see the size of it. So obviously, we do not want that, but this will let you see what we actually did over here. Next thing I'm going to do is add a menu underneath it. So I'm going to click on Insert, and I'm going to go Navigation. And I'm just going to put an ID here for top. And I will explain why in a minute. Now you may be thinking, well, why are we doing that when we have nav as a tag? We only have one nav. Well, the answer is because we may put in 2 navs. So let's go back into this over here. This is if you're going to have a horizontal nav at the very top, menu system. We might want to put in a nav over here on the left. So let's just put in here, go back into Code View, and we're going to equal height columns. Let's go back and see where we want it. So we want it, let's put it above the column 1 and include the column 1. So we'll go into Code, and this is where we're at. We're in class container. Here's our column 1, H2. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to include inside of here. Now notice I'm doing it inside this div class. So I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to go to Navigation. And if you're going to ask me why it creates a tag called nav instead of navigation, I don't know. And I actually don't care. So I'm going to make this ID nav top. I cannot make it left because we already have a ID of left, which is right here. So let's just make this nav left. That presents a problem. Not really in sense of what we want to do, but it presents a problem in terms of inconsistency. because now we have a nav left and then we have a top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this ID to nav top. And we're good there. Let's go into live, and you can see what we have in here. So what I'm going to do just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to put a different color background for the nav so you can see where these things are going to head. So let me go into the CSS Designer, and we're going to work with the left one over here, then we'll go back and do the top one. So first thing I'm going to do is click on the nav left, which is here, and I'm going to insert a new selector. Now notice it's going over here, column left, nav left. It's also, we could put a nav in there, but there's nothing here that's going to override it. So we can just make this nav left if you want, or you can leave all this alone. It's totally up to you what you want to do, or you could do nav and space left. What this means is I only want to work on something that has an ID of nav left that's contained within a nav. So let's make the background color here white, just for demonstration purposes. And we'll go and change a lot of this stuff as we move along. That's the easiest way to make something white. All the way up to the top is white, all the way down at the bottom is left. This is your opacity. We want it to be 100% opacity. So I'm going to click on OK. And once we do that, let's see what happens. Apparently, nothing. So that means there's an issue here. So what we need to do is find out what's wrong. Let's go back into Code View. And we have nav ID over here, and boom. So there's something else that's overriding it. And they go, oh, look at this, style background. So let's take this off, and let's see what happens. There we go. Now that's white. So now what I want to do is make the left background a different color. And I'm doing these things here just so you see how things work. And let's just make it 50% opacity and see what happens here. Okay, so we still have an issue here. So I'm going to leave this over here for you guys to think about. What is the issue? And when you have an issue, 99% of the time, if not 100% of the time, it's a spelling problem. So I'm going to leave this alone for right now. So then the last thing I'm going to do in this video is create a footer. So I want you to try to figure out what's wrong in here. I will show you the CSS code, and then I will come back in the next video and correct it. I'm going to try to make as many mistakes as I can, so that gives you an opportunity to address how you can fix something if something happens. So let's go back to the code. And at the very bottom here, before the body, we have div ID wrapper. So let's click on this and see where this goes. So underneath this here, and it can be confusing, you have to be very careful where you're putting it. We want this underneath the containers over here. And we want it just in front of the wrapper. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on Insert, and I'm going to put in a footer. And I want it at the insertion point. Now notice it gives you different options: before tag, after starter tag, and before the end of tag, and after tag. So let's just do the insertion point, and boom. So now we should have something that looks exactly what we want. That's it for this video. Look forward to our next one.